Hey, we're back again with another episode of Quick Take with me and Nisha. So one of the things that have been the talk of the town lately has been around cybersecurity, given the remote scenario and everything that's been happening. Right, it's becoming an impending concern, not just for CHROs but CIOs and everybody involved in the game. That hey, how do we secure our own infrastructure better? How do we make sure that our employees are also secure from ransomware and cybersecurity attacks? And with us, we've got a very what can I say, very experienced guest with us because I've spent the entire day binge reading his blog and it's been brilliant, all from his days from IIT Guwahati as well. So let me introduce to you Sai Krishna, who's the founder and CEO of Hackrew. He's also a security researcher and an alumnus of IIT Guwahati as well. All of his information again will be laid out in the description and on our LinkedIn post as well. Be sure to check him out. And I highly recommend reading his articles for all extra information around his experiments right from his college as well. Sai Krishna, it's been it's great to have you with us online. Uh, Nisha, I'd let you start the show tonight.
Thank you, Arun, and thank you so much, Krishna. It's such an honor to have you. Looking at you, I'm really excited for this conversation, right? Krishna, let's just go right there, and I'm going to ask you the first question about cybersecurity itself, right? We've heard so much about cybersecurity, so can you just delve a little deeper and tell our audience what is cybersecurity? Why is it so important for organizations, big or small today? Why are we hearing so much about data attacks and data breaches, ransomware? I mean, all these terms, they seem very scary. Tell us a little more about them, Krishna, please.
Uh, Thank you, Nisha. Thank you, Arun. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me here. So, cybersecurity is a topic that is very close to my heart. And to begin answering your question, right? So, why cybersecurity is important? For example, if you consider and all of these things, right? So, whatever I'm saying, it's in context for the corporates. So, we are not right now talking about personal security and stuff. So, in the corporate world, right? So there are so many different kinds of companies that process user data, companies that process that have some unique IP, companies that process like financial data, banks, or like different kinds of companies, right? And there are also companies which are very competitive to each other as well. So for example, if there is a company A which work like really hard and they're serving some kind of niche market, and they like over 2 years they got so many customers. Now let's say there's some other company B that is coming up in the same market, and they want to get to the customers as quickly as possible. Now at the same moment, just imagine if the company A gets breached and all its data is made public by some hacker. So the next step, next obvious step would be that company B would get the data, and the leverage that company A has would diminish over time. So this is just an example, and let's say if you have like so many companies have their intellectual property, and let's say your competitor gets a hang out of it, or uh, user data is being used by other companies, and there's like a uh, lot of issues that arise when it comes to when the user data is getting hacked from these companies. And let's say you're like let's say you're some airport, or like some big company that has a processing facility. Let's say you got a ransomware attack or something, and suddenly there is no way you can all your systems are like hung up. And this actually happened recently as well. Like there's a meat processing facility in some country, and they got hit by ransomware, and they had to pay the ransom just so that their operations are not delayed, because their systems become unusable, and the loss that they're incurring would be much more than the ransom that they're asked to pay. So there is a lot of financial risk, and like user data is anyways going, and basically the companies can go to zero because of uh, this. So that is why this is cybersecurity is often not properly looked at from the beginning stages of companies, but this is a really important pillar for any company to stand on.
Yeah, that was JBS from Brazil actually. That's
Yeah,
the meat company that you're talking about.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's a huge case currently. But Krishna, it's a follow up to my original question, right? So if someone were to ask you to define, give it small definitions, what is cybersecurity? What is a data breach? What is a ransomware attack? In
Mm.
simple terms, just explain it for people, please.
So cybersecurity is a very big umbrella term, and a huge ton of things come under it. Um, I mean, for to make it simpler, right? So we can think of cybersecurity as basically data security, whatever data that is there, right? And so that it's not compromised. So whatever that you do regarding it, so what are the practices that are there, and what you do, so everything just comes under this umbrella term as cybersecurity. And to talk about ransomware risk, so this is one of the key word that has been trending a lot lately, as you said, because uh, they have been basically, there are different types of black hat hackers, right? So everybody has a motto. Somebody just wants to get the user data and get out of there. There are some state sponsored attacks which target some critical organizations that are different. So lately this ransomware has been there from a long time, but lately there is a very sharp rise in ransomware attacks. So what their motto is that they uh, attack a company, and they encrypt all the computers that are in the company's network. So what happens is that now the company can't do any work because all their computers have been encrypted. All the data that is there on the computers are encrypted. So right now they can't use the files or the computer or do anything uh, because of this. So which, and in return, right, in return to make it normal, the attackers ask for a ransom. So that is why this is called ransomware, and most of the time the payment is made in Bitcoin so that it's not tracked. You can't track the attackers directly. And for example, a recent example is the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack, where they indeed paid some $5 million in ransom. uh, so what is the third point? uh,
Data breaches, but I think
that
that
Yeah, that is, I mean, as it sounds obvious, right? Because the companies have a lot of data. So anytime there's a breach that is happening, basically, if your personal information that is supposed to be with the company, right? So anytime that is being made public uh, by some attacker, right? So that is categorized as a data breach.
Makes a lot of sense. I so to sort of dive deeper into this point better and to sort of bring structure to these things, I have two questions for you. One, um, for a company, right? Be it corporate, be it a mid-sized company, what should an ideal team comprise of, right? In terms of both communicating certain protocols and certain recommended tech stacks for employees, and also in terms of the server side security as well. What keeping both of these aspects in mind, what sort of a team should be there, and how should things be communicated? How should the protocol ensure adoption better? What would your recommendation be on that front?
So the companies are in different stages, right? So basically, we can't have like a one generic solution for every company. So let's say there's a big company that is like that has some 2,000 employees and 2,000 or more, and they have like very large presence, right? So it makes sense for them to get a chief information security officer who would look after, who will do like a risk assessment, and when should testing be done, proper penetration testing be done for their servers. And so so basically they will look after everything the company is doing from a cybersecurity standpoint of view. So what kind of access should normal users have, what kind of privileged accounts should be there in the network, etc., etc. So all these kinds of things that come under CISO. And on the other end, if you look at startups, right? So most startups, they get a person dedicated for cybersecurity very late into the game. So even though they get funding and everything, right? So they mostly, it's the developer only who looks after testing the code and debugging it and looking at any reports that are coming in. But so I would say that for startups, right? So as long as they can, they're getting users, right, and they're getting some money, so it's very important for them to immediately get at least one cybersecurity person in the team, who would regularly do some penetration tests for uh, all the functionality that is being developed, and look for any kind of vulnerabilities that are being shipped in the code. So on the medium range, right, so many of the organizations that are interacted with it, the CTO themselves directly deal with uh, external security companies. So that's when they take help of external cybersecurity companies, because they don't have the enough uh, work to, so that they can employ some cybersecurity security professionals. So that's when they hire other companies to intervene and do testing of that sort. But it's, the bottom line is that it's very important, as long as you can get somebody from security background into your team, they should do it. That is the bottom line for this.
Is that what Hackrew also does, Krishna?
So Hackrew is a so this is one of the issues that I understood while working with many companies. Before Hackrew, also I was kind of freelancing with many clients and stuff. As Varun said, right? So I was like writing my blog posts, and randomly people started approaching me. They are like, we want this to be tested, we want this to be some particular thing to be done, we want an opinion on this particular thing that we're developing. And then I was asking myself, so why are these people coming to me? Because at that point I was a nobody, I was just writing some blogs online related to cybersecurity. But why are these people coming to me? Because there must be some good companies, cybersecurity companies out there, right? So why aren't these people going to them? So I was thinking from, starting from that point, right? So the problem is became more apparent gradually, because cybersecurity in India is not approachable, according to me. I mean, some companies do know that they need to get some kind of testing done, but since not everybody has a cybersecurity background, they have no idea on how to proceed. So they're not sure of if they should get, like, say, a black box testing done or white box testing done. So what is the difference between black box testing and white box testing? For example, in one scenario you just give normal access, what everybody else, or what your, basically your customers or your users have access to. In the other case, right, you give access to your code as well, your code base as well. So people, and how often do you need to get this kind of testing done? Is it just one asset, or all the assets that are in the company? By assets I mean, like, different services that are being run in the company, online services. So they have, and most of the CTOs and CEOs, right, they do not understand this thing uh, properly. So that is, and so without doing, knowing that, they don't know who, which cybersecurity company to ask, and what service to ask for. So that is the exact thing that we are trying to solve. So we are a marketplace for cybersecurity services and products. So whenever you are in doubt, so you know that you want to get, you want to make sure your product is secure, but you don't know how. So we are those people who to approach at that time. So what we'll do is, we will do a one-on-one with you. We'll understand what your setup is, and then we will give you the best possible feedback on what to do and what to do next. At the same time, we also partnered with many security companies, cybersecurity firms in India, and we vetted them, and then we know the procedure they do. So what are procedures they follow while testing? What are the checklists that they do? What is their reporting style and everything? And the ones that passed our audit rate, so we partnered up with them. So now this company will have access to all the cybersecurity companies, and they also know where to go. So once what they need is fixed, then they know where to approach, right? So this is a kind of ecosystem we are building to make cybersecurity more approachable in India.
Yeah. I'm glad we're normalizing it to some extent, and we're making the term better known. I think the endeavor of today is also exactly that. And it brings me to my next question for you, Krishna. We've been talking a lot about remote work, and I mean, in our podcast itself, we've kind of delved so deep into the various concepts of work itself. Um, but of late, since organizations are going hybrid and they will continue to go hybrid, we have heard of so much more. This term has suddenly become in vogue. So what should a company do? Like you initially mentioned, companies think of it as an afterthought, but in a hybrid setup or in a remote setup, this is one of the initial planning that a company has to kind of undertake, right? So to prevent 2020 like and 2021 like situations, what should a company think of, and how much should they invest in cybersecurity? I think it's also a matter of how much, what is the basic budget, or is there a budget, or is it an on the go thing? If you can talk about some of the monetary aspects as well as preventive aspects that companies should undertake, please, Krishna.
So with COVID, right? I mean, there was a sudden like as you said, the hybrid workspace and work from home thing, it just boomed. So now what happened is companies that have, for example, if you look at some very well established companies, right? So they give users their own devices, right? Or their employees, basically their devices. They give a phone, they give a laptop. Now if you look at startups or MSMEs, right? So they don't have that much budget. So initially, let's say if they have like desktops in their workspace, right? So some companies just gave the desktops and asked the users to and asked their employees to take them home, and and some other companies, they just ask users to sorry, just ask the employees to work from their own laptops, personal laptops. Now this is where the issue comes in. Let's say the company, right, it took like some antivirus license or something, and it's running on the company system. Okay. And there's so many other kind of end user protection softwares that companies often purchase and run on the system, so that the company laptops, desktops, and servers, they don't get hacked. uh, Now what happens is the moment you introduce them, and also the companies have like their own network, internal network, right? So that outsiders can't access this network. Now, what happens with this kind of remote work, right? So let's say if the companies don't have a VPN to securely connect to that internal network from home, right? What happens is that people are working on their personal laptops, and they're connecting to the company's networks insecurely. So this just opens up a lot of attack surface for somebody with malicious intents. And so the companies should start looking from that perspective, like do we have like two factor authentication? There isn't any exhaustive checklist, as you said, right? As you asked, basically there isn't an exhaustive checklist, and it's basically uh, the more precautions you take, the harder it gets for the adversary to penetrate into your network. So, for example, does your company enforce two-factor authentication on your emails or on company softwares, or whatever the company is dealing with? Do they have a dedicated VPN so that you can connect remotely? Do they provide you a device, uh, a company's own device? Does it have a basic antivirus? Because the last thing you want is, some employee clicked on some spam email, and it's suddenly it's executing ransomware, and then everything is encrypted, right? So basically, after you should, I mean, companies which even don't have any kind of basic budget for cybersecurity, right, the least thing they can do is just make two-factor authentication available. Just by that one thing, right? In 20, sorry, I forgot the year, but Zomato data breach happened, and one of the ways it happened is because the employee, right, he was using the same passwords in two different places, and the first company, right, it got hacked, and the password was leaked publicly. So the attacker was able to see this password and see that at the rate of zomato.com, and he just logged into GitHub using that. And at the after logging in, he got access to all the source code of Zomato, and then he exploited the source codes to get the Zomato data out. So this is published on Zomato's official blog itself. So I mean, simple things. For example, if they enforced a company-wide two-factor authentication at that place, even though you have a credential, even though if the attacker has the credential, right, they can't do much with that at that point. And so basically, his the attacker's uh, job becomes like much more difficult just because of that one thing. Let's say with that extra you have added a VPN also, so you need a VPN configuration file to connect to the internal network, or you need some access additional credentials or something. Now the attacker jobs becomes like even more difficult. So you can kind of stack these things, like you have like a intrusion detection system or intrusion prevention system. So depends on the cybersecurity budget of the company, and it's not like you have to do everything at once itself, right? So with every quarter or with every year, you can kind of improve the kind. You can increase your cybersecurity budget and improve these things.
So you're saying initially that there's no budget itself, Krishna, it's just some basic steps.
Yeah, that is, I mean, just the basic step also have a lot of written, right? I mean, they just make the job much more difficult for the adversary. So from that, it depends on budget itself, because if the company is paranoid about its security, right, there are like n number of products in the very good products in the market that they can go and buy whatever fits their needs. So there's not like a one, again it depends on what kind of company it is, what are their important assets, what if companies do this kind of risk management, so they will know what is the most important, what is that one server that is most important to them, so they will protect that first. Does that server need to be on like the internet? So they will do all this kind of activities, right? I mean, if the companies are not doing it, they're at least supposed to do it so that they know what is important, what will people come after, uh, right? What will the attackers come after? So they should be aware of these kind of things. So these kind of assessment should be done internally as well. So there should be a proper culture internally as well for these kind of things.
There's an interesting rhetoric that sort of came out of this, the fact that if you can't fight the enemy, it's good to sort of delay them as much as possible. And I think the mindset with a lot of people is that they think cybersecurity is a nice to have and not a must have. And I think that's where a lot of things happen, in that gap. So one of the things that have sort of what can I say, the bedrock of all of these things, I would say, is the Indian Data Protection Act. And a lot of people aren't aware of this. There's some great one-on-ones online that we can all check out. But Sai, what is your take on it? Like, what is something, from your perspective, what is something that people should know about this? Even if, I mean, it's I think it's section 43A, as I think of the IT section. Um, so apart from the one-on-ones that are available, what are the things that you think should be important that I think people can just go out and read and sort of at least educate themselves as a bare minimum about it?
Yeah. So, I mean, so before answering that, you were just talking about this interesting rhetoric that came out of
Yeah.
this thing, right? So,
Because things
I
like
mean,
two-factor authentication and like
yeah.
having various even something as simple as having a recovery number, or I was once I this was some I think years ago I'd gone to this it was like a trade fair or something, and I saw this weird stick being advertised. I don't really remember the stick. It was like a USB, but then you could just sort of authenticate everything system wide with your fingerprint on it. I think Intel and a couple of companies sell that. uh,
Hmm.
I saw all of those things being advertised, and they weren't too complex for anybody to understand. I mean, hey, it's your data, it's your password, it's your financial statements, it's your code, it's all of those things. Why wouldn't you want to sort of just invest in it? It's something that should sort of sell by itself, right? Which is why
Yeah.
it's told ki, hey, these are little rhetoric elements that come out of these things, that look, you can just try and delay things as much as you can, is what I think.
Exactly. And all we can do is, keep as much hurdles as possible in the way, because one day there will be like some 0 day exploit that just came. Basically, nobody knew about this exploit, right? So nothing, you can't do anything about it. So the only thing you can do is like, take down the system immediately, or uh, try to patch it if the patch is available. They try to fix the vulnerability, right? So for example, one of the examples is the Microsoft vulnerability that recently came, Microsoft Exchange vulnerability. So a lot of Indian companies were also affected, and what we started doing was we were like monitoring, like you can see, like which Indian companies were running. It's a mail software, so lots of Indian companies were running mail on that, including some of from the government department. So we were just looking at how fast will they fix it. So it's been like 5-6 months, right? So right now I think some 50-60% of the companies fixed it, but five, just by that, when Microsoft announced that there's this vulnerability and there's a patch available, right? Immediately there were some Chinese hacking groups which were exploiting this vulnerability en masse. So they were scanning and the entire internet for the servers that are running this software, and they're just attacking it. They like automated the entire process. So in these cases, right, you need to be, that is why one of the reasons you need to have a security team who knows of all the inventory of what your softwares you're running, or everything, right? Otherwise it's just there's a vulnerability outside and people are like mass exploiting it, and then we still don't know that you are running that inside your own organization. That is a very bad state to be in. So we should do as much as possible so that we are not in that place, at least.
You're like a
And
sitting duck because there are people out there who do this for a living. I mean,
exactly.
and also since you mentioned the whole Microsoft thing, I also remember that there's this. I think this happened with. I think it was last year. I don't remember. Google and everything else had their own outage for like 30-40 minutes, and
Yeah,
everybody, at least in the startup world, thought, "Hey, this is Judgment Day. This is how everything ends. This is how the world falls apart." So if that can happen to something like Google, I'm just saying,
exactly,
you know,
exactly.
Yeah.
And also to
Coming
answer
back
your,
time. Yeah, what happened to Data Protection Act?
yeah. So coming back to Data Protection Act, right? So Data Protection Act talks about a lot of your personal data related stuff and everything, right? So I mean, the one thing that companies need to focus on is that so if the companies are hacked, or companies were a part of data breach, or they're not doing enough to protect the user security, right? So what happens then is these companies will be fined a lot according to the Data Protection Act. So by the time this Data Protection Act uh, is going to be made into an act, right? So before it's passed as an act, the company should at least take care of some minimum requirements, like are we getting like testing done? When is the last time we got testing? If you got like some security testing done some 5 years ago, and lots of code must have been changed, lots of functionality must have been added, right? So that's a very bad practice. Uh, so the companies will be fined a lot, and so they should be very much prepared from now itself before that happens, because at that time there will be chaos when stuff happens.
Hey, when is it likely to?
It was delayed already. It was supposed to come in 2020, but it was delayed because of Corona and stuff. So, but yeah, so it should be passed soon.
No, a lot of times you don't come to know when acts are passed and suddenly you will be fined. So
Yeah.
it's better to kind of have a slight trail. But I feel like putting you in a spot today, Krishna. So I know that you know a lot of stuff that's happening around. You've always given us stories of stuff you've seen in the past. Any? Do you want to tell us what or who is gonna be attacked anytime soon?
No, but anytime soon, I mean, right now, the trend I'm seeing, right, just if you take 2021, right, in the 6 months itself, there's so many companies that are part of data breaches. I mean, basically, people got used to it now that, okay, my data is like gone now. There's no point in worrying about it. I mean, that's a very sad state
That's
to be in.
pity, that's a pity. As a user, I'm like, oh, gone now. There's nothing that the company or I can do. So, I mean, we shouldn't be in that situation, right? We should be able to fight for our data. Do you think that'll ever happen?
Hopefully with the Data Protection Act, that happens like very strictly. For example, if you take European countries for example, right, the GDPR is so strict. And I was talking to a friend, like he was telling me that let's say there's a subsidiary of a company, small subsidiary of a company, and it got breached. Okay, so they will impose a fine on the parent company, some 4% of its revenue or something. So of the parent company. So and that would be like the fine itself would be more than what the subsidiary is like making in profits. So we need like stricter laws in terms of that too. Right now, the cybersecurity, right? When it comes to cybersecurity, companies only follow what is bare minimum and necessity according to the rules. So the only way forward is to make the rules more stricter, according to me. And also the story, right? So just today I was like reading a story of how EA Sports got hacked. I mean that's so crazy because the hackers, right? They didn't. So they brought. So basically, there is a concept called cookies. Okay, so cookies are basically, if you have a cookie, right, you don't require a username and password because the cookie is a valid. It's as valid as a username and password basically. So somebody in the dark web, so they sold this cookie to Slack, the Slack cookie basically, uh, to these hackers, and these people purchase it for like $10, $10 or $20, and after that they logged into Slack of EA Sports, and then they uh, pinged the IT department or IT team saying that, hey, I just lost my phone yesterday in a party and I can't perform like authentication, like two-factor authentication or something. So then what happened is they gave them a one access code kind of thing which they can use everywhere for a few days. So just with that, they penetrated deep into the network. They were able to basically siphon off some 170 GB or something of the sorts of code, game, all the game code, right? So they were able to, just imagine, take so much money to develop games, so many developers, so many animators, so much effort goes into it, and these people just got access to the code just like that. So all it took was $20 and access to cookies and some social engineering. So and big companies fall prey for stuff like this. So we need to have enough. You need to have enough like processes in place so to delay these as much as possible, and to make sure one more important thing I completely forgot telling about it. For example, uh, educating the developers and the people inside the company. Okay, so just letting them know what a phishing mail is, what are the do's and don'ts when it comes to cyber security, what can you click on, what can't you click on. This is not at all done in like so many companies in India, and that is so much more important because we talk about ransomware, right? So who gives access to ransomware? Most of the times it's the user, it's the employee who clicks on something that just came in the mail and then they'll just run it on their system. So basically it's the employee that is doing it. uh, so it's very much important. That is one more important point that I forgot to mention earlier.
Right. It's been very interesting to sort of go to some of these case studies. And I think even companies by themselves, right, be it Google and Apple, I think they themselves are making a lot of great leaps and bounds, especially Apple is with the whole privacy thing. I catched, WWDC 2021,
Mm.
and they had some great privacy features out there that have come out. So it's pretty fantastic that companies who are also aware of these things are also taking steps forward to it.
Yeah,
And
so Apple and Google, and they're being very much responsible
right.
these days. And one more thing I would like to add is, so the one more thing that is common between Apple and Google is that they have, and Microsoft, Facebook, Uber, so all these big companies, if you take them, right, so they have something called a bug bounty program as well. So a kind of responsible disclosure
They
program,
actually
which
hire people to say, "Hey, find stuff for us, and we'll."
it's not hiring people. For example, I'll just give you small examples. Let's say if I find, so I found some vulnerability in one of the state government's COVID portal, right? uh, it's basically leaking their Aadhaar card, PAN card, not PAN card, so the passport if they give it, and their like house address and these kind of personal details. And so far like some 2.5 crore user details are there in that, which is not supposed to be accessible to somebody else, but there's no way for me to report it directly to them. Okay, but at the same time, if I find something of the bug, any bug like that in Google, Microsoft, anything, right? So they want me to mail them. So just by chance, even if anybody is finding, right, they're open to hear from people, right? So, and responsible disclosures, they cost nothing. Bug bounties, you need to pay some kind of bounty because you're promising a bounty and you are like incentivizing people to find bugs in your system, so that more people find bugs, and then you are like more secure over the time. But responsible disclosure policy, right, having a responsible disclosure policy literally says that these are the do's, these are the don'ts. For example, you don't like bring down our system, don't access like other users data, don't, even if you can, don't do that, you just report to it to us. So how do you report it? So what is our timeline, in how much time will we fix it? So basically responsible disclosure policy talks about just the bare minimum thing. And interesting thing is India has the highest number of bug bounty hunters in the world, and we are not using the talent at all. So one more thing the companies can follow with, uh, like without investing much money, right, is having a responsible disclosure policy.
So there's some fantastic points actually. I think a lot of people aren't aware that hey, this is also an avenue that can be explored. Sai Krishna, it's been again great talking to you about all of these various aspects. Uh, Again, to sort of emphasize to the general audience why we're having this conversation, why Nisha and I, why the Edge as a brand has sort of taken a step to have this as part of a quick take, is also the fact that hey, everything is, you want to sort of have layers of security already built into place so that you don't have a single point of failure in any way. This is old. I mean, before we sort of conclude, I just want to share this old World War II anecdote, and I think that beautifully sums up this conversation. Uh, this was in 1945. The Brits were losing. Germany was quite up there. And then all of the planes, the fighter planes that were sort of coming back, right? The ones that came back had bullet holes all over the fuselage, right? And the ones that didn't come back, of course, they had all the bullets, apart from the fuel, they had it at the engine, at the heart of it. And so people are like, hey, why don't we armorize the entire plane? Because at least, hey, we'll get more people back. But imagine the ones that aren't actually coming back because of that one single bullet hitting your engine. And that's where you sort of have to sort of armorize your core. And I think that's where cyber security comes in. And that's be it your day-to-day employee communication, that's be it your own code base, that's being all of those central parts of your organization. I think the more you armorize that, better things could be avoided in that sense. So, Sai Krishna, again, it's been great talking to you. This is Nisha and I for the Edge podcast of CHROs. We'll have all of Sai Krishna's links in the description again. Please be sure to check out our older episodes. And Nisha and I have been enjoying the feedback that's been coming in, and we've been experimenting a lot with this. So, again, thanks a lot for being a part of this journey. Uh, this is the Edge podcast of CHROs with Nisha and Varun. Thanks.